Lila sat on the edge of her bed, the glow of her phone illuminating her thoughtful expression. The message from Daniel was still on the screen. "I can't wait to finally meet you in person, Lila." It was a simple sentence, but it carried an unexpected weight. For 3 months, Daniel had been her confidant, her sounding board, and, in many ways, her lifeline. After years of drowning in grief over losing her fiancé, Ethan, Leela had found solace in their nightly conversations. Daniel had a way of understanding her, of knowing exactly what to say to soothe her fears and calm her racing thoughts. She didn't feel judged or pitied with him, just understood. But now, the idea of meeting him in person filled her with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Was she truly ready to let someone new into her life? Could she even imagine a future without the shadow of Ethan's memory looming over her? Her gaze drifted to the small nightstand beside her bed. Resting on it was a delicate silver ring, a promise of forever that had been cut short far too soon. Lila reached out, her fingers brushing the cool metal. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what would you want me to do?" Silence answered her, as it always did. Lila took a deep breath, steeling herself. She knew she couldn't keep hiding behind her grief forever. Daniel wasn't asking for a lifelong commitment, just a chance to meet her, to take their connection out of the virtual world and into the real one. He deserved that much, didn't he? Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard before typing a response. "See you at 4." She hit send before she could overthink it. The hours leading up to the date were a blur of preparation and nerves. Lila sifted through her closet, searching for something that felt like her, something simple yet beautiful. She finally settled on a soft blue dress, one Ethan used to say brought out the sparkle in her eyes. She paired it with her grandmother's silver locket, a cherished heirloom that she always wore on important occasions. As she stood in front of the mirror, a pang of doubt crept in. Was she betraying Ethan by doing this? By trying to move forward? She clutched the locket tightly, whispering, "I'm trying. I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm trying." The cafe Daniel had chosen was a cozy, inviting space nestled in the heart of the city. It was the kind of place that smelled like freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries, with soft jazz playing in the background. Leela arrived a few minutes early, her hands trembling slightly as she ordered a cappuccino and claimed a corner table. Every time the door opened, her heart skipped a beat. Would he look like his photos? Would the connection they shared online translate to real life? When the door finally swung open and Daniel stepped inside, Lila felt the air leave her lungs. He was tall, with dark hair that fell in loose waves across his forehead and piercing green eyes that seemed to scan the room with quiet confidence. He smiled when he spotted her, and for a moment Lila thought her heart might stop. There was something about him, something hauntingly familiar, that she couldn't quite place. "Lila?" His voice was warm, smooth, and rich, like the first sip of hot cocoa on a cold day. "Yes." Lila managed to smile, though her heart was pounding. She stood, and they shook hands, a brief electric touch that sent shivers down her spine. "It's nice to finally meet you in person." "The feeling's mutual," Daniel replied, his lips curling into a smile that felt both genuine and strangely familiar. They sat down, and for the first few minutes, their conversation was light and easy. Daniel asked about her day, her favorite coffee, and whether the cafe met her expectations. Lila found herself laughing at his dry humor, momentarily forgetting her nerves. But as the minutes passed, unease began to creep in. The way Daniel tilted his head when he listened, the subtle lilt in his voice, even the way he tapped his fingers against the table, it all felt eerily familiar. She tried to shake the feeling, telling herself she was imagining things. After all, she'd spent years with Ethan. Of course, she might unconsciously compare Daniel to him. But it wasn't just a resemblance, it was a haunting similarity that made her chest tighten. "Are you okay?" Daniel's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. His green eyes were full of concern. Lila forced a smile. "Yeah, sorry, just a little nervous, I guess." He chuckled softly. "You and me both. I was worried you might not show up." "Why would you think that?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Well, you're so amazing," he said, a faint blush rising in his cheeks. "I just thought you might change your mind." Lila felt her cheeks heat at the compliment. "Thank you," she murmured. As the conversation continued, Leela found herself drawn to Daniel's warmth and sincerity. But the resemblance to Ethan was impossible to ignore. When the waiter brought their orders, cappuccino for her, Belgian waffles for him, Lila's heart nearly stopped. Ethan had loved Belgian waffles. Lila stared at the plate in front of Daniel, her mind racing. It was a coincidence, she told herself. Plenty of people liked waffles. But as Daniel cut into his meal, her eyes caught the way he held his fork, the same precise, deliberate way Ethan had always done. "So," Daniel said, breaking into her thoughts, "tell me more about you. What's something you've never told anyone?" The question was simple, yet it made Lila's chest tighten. She glanced at him, searching his face for... she didn't even know what. A clue? A sign? The resemblance to Ethan was uncanny. His features, his mannerisms, even his voice. Lila hesitated before answering. I'm not sure, she said carefully. I guess I've always been afraid of letting go of the past. Daniel tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. The past has a way of holding on to us, doesn't it? His words hit Lila like a punch to the gut. How could he understand her so well? As they left the cafe together, Daniel glanced at her and asked, "Are you sure you're okay? You've seemed a little distracted." Lila hesitated, then said, "You remind me of someone I used to know." Daniel's brows furrowed slightly. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "I'm not sure yet," she admitted. When they parted ways, Lila felt as though her entire world had been tilted off its axis. Daniel wasn't just any stranger. He was a doorway to a past she thought she'd buried. And as she watched him walk away, she couldn't shake the feeling that meeting him was no coincidence. Lila spent the night tossing and turning, her thoughts consumed by the meeting with Daniel. She replayed every moment, every word, and every expression in her mind. The similarities between him and Ethan weren't just superficial. They were striking. The way he smiled, the tone of his voice, and even his laugh all felt too familiar, like echoes of a past she could never forget. Unable to sleep, she sat up in bed and reached for the engagement ring on her nightstand. She held it between her fingers, the cool metal a stark reminder of the love she had lost. Ethan had been her everything. They had planned a future together, filled with dreams and promises, only for it to be cruelly stolen away in an instant. Now, after years of trying to piece herself back together, Daniel had walked into her life, bringing with him memories she wasn't sure she could face again. The next morning, Lila's mind was still clouded with uncertainty. She debated canceling her next meeting with Daniel, but ultimately decided against it. She couldn't run from this, not again. When Daniel called to suggest another outing, his voice was light and hopeful. "How about we meet at the park this time? It's one of my favorite spots to relax." Lila hesitated before agreeing. She needed answers, and the only way to find them was to spend more time with him. The park was serene, with golden sunlight streaming through the trees and a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. Daniel was already waiting for her by the fountain, a warm smile spreading across his face as she approached. "Hey, you made it," he said, his eyes lighting up. "Of course," Lila replied, forcing a smile. They strolled through the park together, talking about everything from books to travel to their favorite childhood memories. Daniel's charm was undeniable, and Lila found herself laughing more than she had in years. But every time he said something that mirrored Ethan's tastes, his love for jazz, his preference for Belgian waffles, his favorite movie being Casablanca, the unease in her chest grew. "Do you believe in fate?" Daniel asked suddenly, stopping to look at her. Lila blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I'm not sure. Why do you ask?" "I don't know," he said with a shrug, his gaze thoughtful. "Meeting you feels like something that was meant to happen." The sincerity in his voice made Lila's heart ache. She wanted to believe him, but the nagging feeling that there was more to this story wouldn't go away. That night, as Lila sat in her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel's presence in her life wasn't just a coincidence. There were too many similarities, too many uncanny moments that made her question everything she thought she knew. She decided to do something she hadn't done in years: pull out her box of memories. It was tucked away in the back of her closet, a dusty, weathered container filled with photographs, letters, and keepsakes from her time with Ethan. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Lila opened the box and began sifting through its contents. Her fingers brushed over photos of their vacations, ticket stubs from their favorite concerts, and handwritten notes Ethan had left for her during their time together. As she flipped through the photos, one in particular caught her eye. It was a family picture taken at Ethan's college graduation. Standing beside Ethan was a young man who looked strikingly similar to him, so much so that Lila's breath caught in her throat. The man in the photo had the same piercing green eyes, the same dark hair, and even the same smile. She flipped the photo over, her hands trembling. Written on the back were the names of everyone in the picture: Ethan, his parents, and Adam. Adam, she whispered, the name feeling foreign yet familiar on her tongue. Ethan had a brother. Suddenly, fragments of conversations with Ethan came rushing back. He had mentioned a brother once, a sibling he was estranged from for reasons he had never fully explained. Could Daniel be Adam? And if so, why hadn't he told her? Lila couldn't rest until she knew the truth. She grabbed her laptop and began scouring Daniel's online profile for any clues. His posts were sparse, and his bio was vague, offering little more than his name and a few hobbies. But there was something about the way he phrased certain things that reminded her of Ethan's letters, almost as if they had been written by the same hand. Her search led her to Ethan's old social media accounts, which she hadn't visited since his death. She scrolled through photos and comments, looking for any mention of Adam. Finally, she found an old post from one of Ethan's friends, tagging both brothers in a college memory. "Can't believe these two are related. Total opposites," the caption read. Lila stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The man in the photo was unmistakably Daniel, or rather Adam. Her mind raced with questions. Why had Adam sought her out? Was it really just a coincidence, or had he known who she was all along? And if he had, what did he want from her? Unable to contain her emotions, Lila picked up her phone and called Daniel. "Hey," he answered, his voice warm. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you tonight. Is everything okay?" Lila's throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak. "Daniel, or should I say Adam?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Daniel finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost resigned. "You figured it out." Lila's heart sank. She had been hoping she was wrong, that her suspicions were just a product of her overactive imagination. But now, the truth was staring her in the face. "I need you to explain," she said, her voice trembling. "Why did you lie to me? Why pretend to be someone else?" "I'll tell you everything," he promised, his tone filled with guilt. "But not over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow? Please." Lila hesitated, torn between anger and curiosity. Finally, she relented. "Tomorrow," she said, "but you'd better have answers." As she hung up, Lila felt a mixture of dread and anticipation. The man she had been opening her heart to wasn't who he claimed to be, and now she was about to uncover the truth behind his deception. The morning arrived with a heavy sense of foreboding for Lila. She dressed slowly, her movements mechanical, as her thoughts swirled with questions. Adam, or Daniel, as he had introduced himself, had betrayed her trust in a way she never expected. Why had he sought her out under false pretenses? What did he hope to gain? When she arrived at the cafe they had agreed upon, Adam was already there, seated at the same table where they'd first met. He looked up as she approached, his expression a mixture of guilt and relief. "Lila," he began, standing awkwardly as if unsure whether to offer a handshake or a hug. She ignored both and sat down, her face set in a hard line. "Start talking," she said, her voice cold and unyielding. Adam sighed and sat down, running a hand through his hair. "First, I owe you an apology. For everything. I never meant to hurt you. Then why lie to me?" Lila's voice cracked with emotion. "Why pretend to be someone else? Do you have any idea what you've put me through?" "I do," Adam said quietly. "And I'm sorry. But I need you to understand, it wasn't my intention to deceive you. Not at first." "Then what was your intention?" Adam hesitated, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "I recognized you at Ethan's funeral. I saw how devastated you were, how much you loved him. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't know how. And when I came across your profile online, I thought maybe it was fate giving me a second chance to connect with you." Lila stared at him, her mind racing. "So you created a fake identity just to talk to me? You made me think you were someone you're not." "I didn't plan for it to go this far," Adam admitted, his voice filled with regret. "At first, I just wanted to be there for you, to help you heal. But the more we talked, the more I realized I cared about you." Lila's breath caught. She had been so focused on her own pain, she hadn't considered what Adam might be feeling. Still, the deception was too great to ignore. "I trusted you," she said, her voice trembling. "You let me believe you were a stranger, someone I could start fresh with. But all along, you were tied to my past." Adam leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "I know I messed up, Lila. I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but I was afraid you'd shut me out. And I didn't want to lose the chance to know you." Lila looked away, tears stinging her eyes. "You had no right to make that decision for me." The weight of Adam's confession lingered heavily between them. Lila sat in silence, her emotions a chaotic whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and confusion. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he thought it was okay to toy with her feelings. But more than that, she wanted to understand how she had let herself fall for someone who wasn't who he claimed to be. Adam broke the silence first, his voice trembling. "Lila, I know I've hurt you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But please believe me when I say my feelings for you are real. Everything I've said, everything we've shared, it wasn't a lie." "How can I believe anything you say now?" Lila's voice was raw with emotion. "You've been lying to me from the start. I don't even know who you are anymore." "You know me," Adam insisted, his desperation evident. "Maybe not as Daniel, but as Adam, the man who cared enough to try and help you, even if I went about it the wrong way." Lila shook her head, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "You manipulated me, Adam. You made me believe I could finally move on, only to drag me back to a past I've been trying so hard to let go of." Adam looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean to manipulate you. I didn't know how else to be there for you. After losing Ethan, I felt like I owed it to him to make sure you were okay." "Don't you dare use Ethan as an excuse," Lila snapped, her anger flaring. "This wasn't about him. This was about you and your guilt, wasn't it?" Adam flinched as if struck, but he didn't deny it. "I do feel guilty. Ethan and I were estranged for years, and I never got the chance to make things right with him. Meeting you, it felt like a way to honor his memory, to make up for the time I lost with him." Lila stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You don't get to honor his memory by using me. I can't do this, Adam. I can't be around you right now." Adam reached out as if to stop her, but he hesitated, his hand falling back to his side. "Lila, please." "No," she said firmly, her voice breaking. "I need time, and I don't think I can ever forgive you for this." Without another word, Lila turned and walked away, leaving Adam alone in the cafe. As she stepped outside, the cool air hit her like a wave, and tears began streaming down her face. She had thought she was finally moving forward, only to find herself pulled back into the pain of her past. The days that followed were some of the loneliest Lila had experienced in years. She withdrew from her friends, ignored her work emails, and stayed holed up in her apartment. Every time her phone buzzed with a message from Adam, she deleted it without reading. She couldn't bear to hear his explanations, his apologies, or his pleas for forgiveness. Her nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, she would stare at the engagement ring on her nightstand, wondering if she would ever truly be able to let go of Ethan, or if she even wanted to. Her mind was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to believe that Adam's intentions had been genuine, that he had truly cared for her in his own flawed way. But another part of her couldn't forgive the betrayal, the way he had robbed her of the choice to decide for herself. One evening, Lila finally broke down and called her best friend, Emily. "I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice thick with tears. "I feel like I've been thrown back to square one. I thought I was finally ready to move on, but now I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again." Emily listened patiently, her voice gentle but firm when she replied. "Lila, it's okay to be hurt and angry. What Adam did was wrong, and you have every right to feel betrayed. But you also need to figure out what you want. For yourself. Don't let his actions dictate your future." Lila knew Emily was right, but the path forward still felt uncertain. For now, all she could do was take things one day at a time. Lila had spent the week trying to rebuild the fragile sense of peace that Adam's revelation had shattered. She went back to her routine, answering work emails, attending meetings, even forcing herself to meet Emily for coffee, but the pain lingered. Nights remained her worst enemy. Alone in her apartment, she replayed every conversation with Adam, the warmth in his voice, the way he made her feel understood. Those memories now felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of how easily her trust had been betrayed. One rainy evening, as Lila was curled up on her couch with a cup of tea, a knock echoed through her apartment. Her heart jumped. She wasn't expecting anyone. Setting her mug down, she padded to the door, hesitating before opening it. When she did, there he was. Adam stood on her doorstep, drenched from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead. His eyes, tired but determined, locked onto hers. "Adam?" she asked, her voice a mixture of shock and irritation. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you," he said, his tone earnest. "You've ignored my messages, and I understand why. But I couldn't let things end like this. Not without explaining myself properly." Lila's first instinct was to slam the door, to shut him out of her life once and for all. But something in his expression stopped her. Despite her anger, she could see the raw vulnerability in his eyes. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside and gestured for him to come in. Adam entered cautiously, dripping water onto the floor as he stood awkwardly in the small space. Lila grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to him without a word. "Thank you," he murmured, drying himself off before taking a seat on the edge of her couch. Lila remained standing, arms crossed. "You have 5 minutes, Adam. Start talking." He nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I know I've hurt you, Leela, and I can't undo what I've done. But I need you to know that everything I felt, everything I said, it was real. I didn't come into your life to deceive you. I came because I cared." "You cared?" Lila's voice rose, the anger she had been holding back spilling out. "You cared enough to lie to me? To manipulate me into trusting you? Do you have any idea what that feels like?" "I do," Adam said softly, his eyes filled with regret. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But please, let me explain why I did it." Lila sat down across from Adam, her arms still folded as she waited for him to continue. She wasn't ready to forgive him, but she owed it to herself to hear the full story. "When Ethan and I were growing up, we were inseparable," Adam began, his voice heavy with emotion. "We were twins, but we couldn't have been more different. He was the golden boy, kind, charismatic, always putting others first. I was the screw-up, the one who made mistakes and pushed people away." Lila watched him closely, her heart softening despite herself. She could see the pain etched into his features, the weight of guilt he carried. "We had a falling out years ago," Adam continued. "It was stupid, an argument over something petty. I thought I had all the time in the world to fix things, to make amends. But then, he was gone. And I never got the chance to tell him how much he meant to me." Adam paused, his voice breaking. He looked down, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. "When I saw you at the funeral, I felt like I had been given a second chance. You and Ethan loved each other so deeply, and I thought, maybe I could honor his memory by helping you, by being there for you in a way I couldn't be for him." Lila's throat tightened as she listened. She could see now that Adam's actions, while misguided, had come from a place of genuine pain and longing. But it didn't erase the hurt he had caused. "And the fake identity?" she asked, her voice softer now. Adam met her gaze, his expression filled with remorse. "That was my biggest mistake. I didn't think you'd want anything to do with me if you knew who I was. I thought if I could get to know you as someone new, I could earn your trust. But I see now how wrong that was. I took away your choice, and I'm so sorry for that." Lila looked away, her emotions swirling. She didn't know what to say, what to feel. Adam's honesty was disarming, but it didn't erase the betrayal. The room fell silent as Adam finished his story. Lila sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her mind racing. She had spent weeks feeling angry and hurt, but now hearing Adam's truth, she realized that his pain mirrored her own. They were both grieving Ethan in different ways, both trying to find a path forward. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said finally, her voice trembling. "What you did was wrong, Adam. You lied to me, and you broke my trust." "I understand," Adam said quietly. "And I don't expect you to forgive me. Not now, maybe not ever. I just needed you to know the truth. That's all I wanted." Lila looked at him, her heart aching. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the way he genuinely regretted his actions. She thought about Ethan, about the love they had shared and the life they had planned together. She thought about how Ethan would have wanted her to be happy, to find a way to heal. "I don't know what this means for us. she said slowly. But I know I can't keep living in the past. Maybe we can try to move forward, one step at a time. Adam's eyes lit up with cautious hope. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, Lila. I just want to be there for you, in whatever way you'll let me. Lila nodded, a small, tentative smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know what the future held, but she was willing to take the first step. And as they sat together in the quiet warmth of her apartment, the rain continued to fall outside, washing away the pain of the past and offering a chance for something new to bloom. Months passed, and with each one, Lila found herself growing in ways she hadn't expected. The pain of losing Ethan, though still present, began to fade into a distant memory, not because it was any less real, but because she had learned to carry it differently. She no longer tried to outrun it. Instead, she allowed herself the grace to grieve while still moving forward. Her relationship with Adam remained a delicate thing, fragile, but built on a foundation of trust that had taken time to rebuild. They started slowly, with honest conversations, shared moments of vulnerability, and an understanding that they were both healing. Adam, who had once been a stranger hiding behind a false identity, had become someone she could trust, even if it was still a work in progress. One evening, after a quiet dinner together, Adam looked at her with that same earnest gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. I know we've taken it slow, he said, his voice soft, but I can't help feeling like we've come so far. I want to be part of your life, Lila, not just because of Ethan, but because of you. I care about you. Lila smiled, her heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. She had learned not to rush healing, not to force it into a shape it wasn't meant to take. I care about you too, Adam. And I'm ready to see where this goes at least. The future, uncertain as it always was, no longer felt daunting. They had both suffered loss, but they had also found something unexpected, a chance to build something new. It wasn't a replacement for the past, it never could be. But it was something real, something worth fighting for. And as they stood together side by side, Lila knew that no matter what, this chapter of her life had taught her an important lesson. Healing wasn't about forgetting the past, but about learning to embrace the future with an open heart. Thank you so much for watching the entire story and checking out the video. We hope you enjoyed every moment of it. If you like this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any exciting videos in the future. We truly appreciate your support, and feel free to share this video if you think it might be helpful or inspiring to others. We can't wait to see you in the next video. See you soon and have an amazing day.